The old lion garden has finally grown quiet after the demon's defeat, but beneath its peaceful surface, new destinies are taking shape. Liu Qingshan has chosen to travel with Liu Boqi, while Liu Qingfeng quietly prepares to sacrifice his own scholarly path for the future of the clan. Now Chen and Pei Qian have reached the Azure Phoenix Nation's capital, where the great debate between Buddhism and Daoism is nearing its climax, and strange signs are already stirring beneath the surface. The tea is hot, the storytellers are arguing over who really won the last round, and somehow the mischievous little daoist who vanished with a full belly has found her way back again. Come on in, old friend. There's still a warm corner waiting, and tonight's tale carries enough hidden treasures, scholarly schemes, and jianghu surprises to keep even the sleepiest cultivator awake. With the demon finally subdued, the suffocating shadow that had hung over the lion garden at last dispersed. Assistant Minister Liu and the entire Liu clan were deeply grateful to the cultivators who had joined forces to resolve the calamity. But among them, Liu Boqi and Chen had unquestionably carried the greatest weight. Liu Qingshan's eyes were rimmed red. The lame young man quietly found an opportunity to approach Liu Boqi alone, bending deeply at the waist in sincere gratitude. Afterward, he sought out Chen and his companions and offered them the same solemn bow. Liu Boqi merely pursed her lips. She offered no grand words, no polite reassurances. For someone like her, a drawn saber was often easier than a spoken sentiment. That night, the Lion Garden held a banquet to celebrate the end of the disaster. Cups were raised, dishes filled the tables, and the tension of many sleepless nights finally loosened. Liu Boqi remained as cold as ever. From time to time, she lifted her chopsticks and took a small bite. The entire celebration clearly bored her, and in her eyes it was little more than wasted time. Yet she stayed in the banquet hall until the very end. That small act revealed something important about Liu Boqi. She might disdain empty ceremony, but once she had entered another family's home and helped settle their disaster, she was still willing to give them the dignity of a proper conclusion. Her temperament was sharp, but it was not without rules. The next day, Liu Qingshan somehow found himself walking side by side with Liu Boqi. He invited Chen to accompany them and enjoy the scenery of the Lion Garden. Chen politely declined. Unfortunately for him, his refusal was ignored. In the end, he was effectively dragged along anyway. As the three wandered through the garden, Liu Boqi cast Chen a cold, sideways glance. Chen behaved as though he had seen absolutely nothing. The sunlight was bright that day. Pei Qian had volunteered for a task, and once Chen agreed, the little girl began transporting their books and bamboo slips through the Lion Garden one bundle at a time. Back and forth she went, slowly moving the entire collection toward an empty patch of ground, looking for all the world like a tiny ant relocating its nest. When the work was finally finished, Pei Qian squatted beside her carefully arranged treasures, looking enormously satisfied with herself. Two figures approached from afar. Pei Qian recognized them as teachers from the Lion Garden's private school. One was the old scholar Fu Sheng. The other was a middle-aged scholar surnamed Liu. Since she knew who they were, Pei Qian did not stop them. The middle-aged scholar halted some distance away. Only Fu Sheng continued forward, stopping beside Pei Qian with an easy smile.
Young lady, may I take a look at what is written on these bamboo slips?
Pei Qian immediately stood and gave the old scholar a proper bow, respectfully greeting Mr. Fu. She thought for a moment, then squatted back down and waved generously toward the bamboo slips.
Go ahead. Feel free to look. There's nothing to hide anyway. The things written on these bamboo slips are excellent. Some are phrases my master painstakingly copied from books, while others are words he heard from people during his travels.
Among them was a line Julian had casually spouted some time ago. The Book of Bitter Lessons Learned Through Life was the finest book for educating a person. Chen had actually carved that sentence onto a bamboo slip without omitting a single character. Pei Qian however, hated that particular slip. She had banished it to the farthest edge of the collection, leaving it isolated like a disgraced exile. In her judgment, it simply could not compare with the rest of her master's precious writings. Pei Qian raised her head, suddenly adopting an extremely serious expression.
Let me make something clear first, Mr. Fu. Since I'm allowing you to look at my master's precious treasures, you have to stand up for me if master gets angry. You might not know this, but my master is very strict with me. Odd. I suppose that can't be helped, since master likes me so much. I have to copy text, practice walking meditation, and... Actually, forget it. Mr. Fu probably wouldn't understand anyway. Old scholars who spend all day studying in scripture libraries might not even know how many copper coins a steamed bun costs.
Still not reassured, she issued one final warning.
Mr. Fu, you can't let my good deed bring trouble back onto my own head. Right, you agree?
Agreed.
And so Pei Qian remained crouched beside the bamboo slips, while the azure-robed old scholar squatted down beside her. Fu Sheng examined them one by one, lifting each slip gently and returning it to precisely where it had been. Only after seeing how carefully he treated them did Pei Qian finally breathe a quiet sigh of relief. Fu Sheng had read roughly half the collection when he encountered a particular sentence. His eyes lingered on it before he looked toward the little girl.
The fist is the paramount reason in the world. Young lady, do you agree with that?
Of course I do. Otherwise, why would I practice walking meditation, fist dances, sword techniques, and saber techniques every single day when I'm still so young? The cultivation world is full of danger. Bad people are everywhere.
Pei Qian was about to continue with several impressive declarations about her ambitions, when a warning from Old Man Wei abruptly surfaced in her mind. Speaking too deeply with strangers was a major taboo of the cultivation world. She forcefully swallowed the rest of her words. Better to keep such thoughts locked safely inside her heart. Her master was the only person who needed to hear them. This tiny hesitation showed how deeply Chen Pingyan and the people around him had already shaped Pei Qian. She was still lively, boastful, and quick-witted, but beneath that childish surface she had begun to understand one of the first survival principles of the martial world. Not every truth in one's heart should be revealed to every person one meets. The middle-aged scholar standing farther away instinctively furrowed his brows. Fu Sheng, on the other hand, burst into hearty laughter. Pei Qian had no idea what was so amusing. She simply shuffled to the side and began turning over bamboo slips so that their reverse sides could bask in the sunlight as well. As she worked, she casually continued.
But Master taught me that when explaining this principle, there has to be a proper sequence. The order cannot be reversed. A person should always speak reason first. Once your fist becomes big and strong enough, then it becomes easier to speak reason with people who refuse to listen to reason. But that doesn't mean everyone should forget reason and only compare whose fist is larger. People shouldn't just beat each other up and forget about moral vigilance when alone. Self-restraint, etiquette, examining their own conscience, and all those other things. Master says I'm still young, so for now I only have to remember these principles. Whether I understand them yet doesn't matter. All those principles will still be waiting for me inside the books.
She pondered briefly before reaching her final verdict.
So, Mr. Fu, what you said is reasonable in one sense, but it isn't completely reasonable.
Only then did the expression of the middle-aged scholar soften. Fu Sheng neither mocked the little girl, nor immediately answered her. Pei Qian's explanation contained the core tension of Chen Pingyan's path. Strength matters, but strength is not the same as righteousness. A fist can protect reason. Yet the moment the fist replaces reason entirely, the cultivator has already stepped onto another road. A bright glimmer suddenly appeared in Pei Qian's eyes.
Mr. Fu, is my master's knowledge extremely profound?
I cannot judge the depth of your master's learning from only these few sentences. at the very least. However, what he said is correct. MHM. It is certainly not incorrect. It sounds simple, as though anyone could accomplish it. In reality, it is extraordinarily difficult. Truly putting those words into practice is harder still.
Pei Qian immediately raised an eyebrow. Her earlier enthusiasm vanished, and she stopped Fu Sheng from reading any farther.
Then, mister, Fu shouldn't read too many of these bamboo slips.
Fu Sheng chuckled.
Oh, young lady, you're rather good at holding grudges.
Pei Qian nodded without the slightest embarrassment.
People should respect the elderly and cherish the young. Mr. Fu, you're very old, while I'm very young. That means the two sides cancel each other out. Since that's the case, please don't flaunt your seniority in front of a little girl.
The old scholar was left with little choice.
Your master is teaching you correctly. More commendable still is that while teaching you rules, he has allowed you to preserve your lively thoughts and your natural temperament. Your master is indeed very impressive.
Pei Qian instantly beamed, yet almost as quickly, suspicion crept across her face.
Mr. Fu, did you only say that because you want to read a few more bamboo slips? Fine, fine. Keep reading. I'm genuinely starting to fear old scholars like you. One principle hides inside another principle, then another explanation hides inside that one. Odd. So troublesome.
Even the middle-aged scholar, standing at a distance, could no longer completely suppress the smile tugging at his lips. Long ago, the paramount sage had authored a book whose deepest foundation could essentially be condensed into 4 characters, free of depraved thoughts. Later, another great sage wished to preserve the flawless integrity of the paramount sage's teachings. Yet because he dared not recklessly remove passages from those sacred writings, annotating and explaining them became an extraordinarily difficult task. Thus, Pei Qian's complaint about scholars wrapping principles inside endless layers of other principles struck Fu Sheng as unexpectedly amusing. He chuckled for quite some time. The middle-aged scholar secretly agreed with her as well. The irony reached far beyond this little patch of sunlight in the lion garden. The 3 teachings, the 100 schools of thought, imperial courts, and perhaps the entire world all struggled with the same problem: how to preserve a pure principle without burying it beneath so many explanations that ordinary people could no longer touch its original heart. Yet something else troubled the middle-aged scholar even more. Fu Sheng was behaving strangely today. The old scholar had lived in the lion garden for a long time. During that entire period, he had never smiled. Not once. Today, because of a tanned little girl guarding a pile of bamboo slips, he had already smiled several times. When Fu Sheng had finally finished reading every bamboo slip, he stood. Pei Qian was still diligently turning them beneath the sun, sweat gathering on her forehead. Fu Sheng intended to lend a hand, but Pei Qian hurriedly waved him away. She roughly wiped the sweat from her forehead with her arm and smiled.
I respect my elders very much, so there's no need for Mr. Fu to help. If Master sees you doing my work, he'll definitely twist my ears.
Fu Sheng smiled and took his leave. As he departed, he even waved for Pei Qian to remain where she was, rather than rising to bow again. One might say that the old scholar, in his own way, was cherishing the young. The 2 scholars walked side by side through a narrow lane shaded by dense trees. The middle-aged scholar clearly wished to ask something, but hesitation restrained him. Fu Sheng spoke first.
If my guess is correct, that young man should be the old scholar's final disciple.
A complicated expression crossed the middle-aged scholar's face. Fu Sheng sighed softly.
Let us not concern ourselves with that.
The middle-aged scholar nodded, then changed the subject.
Then when does Master intend to accept Liu Qingshan as a disciple in my opinion? He has already passed this examination.
Fu Sheng shook his head.
It is still too early. Liu Qingshan has read a myriad of books in the scripture library and has understood certain principles, but understanding words and knowing how to conduct oneself are different matters. He still needs to travel through the world, witness more events, and meet more kinds of people.
For Fu Sheng, scholarship was not completed inside a scripture library. Books could teach a man what virtue looked like, but only the world could test whether he would still choose virtue when reputation, profit, danger, affection, and loss all pulled him in different directions.
Does Master intend to take Liu Qingshan back to the Middle-earth divine continent and, afterward, will Master entrust him with the sagely texts you personally preserved all those years ago?
Fu Sheng considered the question.
I may not accompany the child while he travels. If I remain by his side, it will attract far too much attention. That may not be beneficial to him.
Then Fu Sheng, an old scholar renowned for carrying forward the teachings of Confucianism, unexpectedly smiled again.
Although that old scholar belongs to a different branch of Confucianism, one thing must be admitted. His ability to choose disciples has been improving. First there was Pei Qian, then Xiu Yu, then Pei Qian.
The middle-aged scholar shook his head.
That young man is not worthy of Mr. Fu's praise. At least, he is not worthy of such praise at this moment.
That judgment may have been fair in terms of cultivation, reputation, and scholarly achievement. Yet Fu Sheng seemed to be looking at something the middle-aged scholar had not fully considered. Not how high Chen Pingyan currently stood, but the direction in which he continued to walk. Elsewhere, Liu Qingshan led Chen Pingyan and Liu Boqi into his study. The moment she entered, Liu Boqi noticed a small wooden box resting on the table. Inside lay a treasure once belonging to the final emperor of a great mortal empire. To a qi refiner lacking the necessary experience, it would appear to be nothing more than a small golden block. A curious trinket, perhaps worth only a few lesser heat coins. Liu Boqi happened to belong to precisely that category of cultivator. She recognized that something was unusual, yet she lacked the knowledge required to see through its full value. Still, thoughts began to form in her mind. Not long afterward, young Master Dugu and his maidservant Meng Long became the first cultivators to leave the Lion Garden. Despite their status and contribution, they accepted only 2 mortal curios from the Liu clan. The master and disciple who traveled with them were far less restrained. They departed with a rich harvest, accepting a large pile of immortal currency that the Liu clan had somehow managed to produce. The Dao partners left afterward. Their reward was equally generous, their pockets filled with far more lesser heat coins than they had expected. They were naturally delighted. Chen Pingyan had wanted to leave much earlier. Liu Qingshan, however, repeatedly asked him to stay. In the end, Chen Pingyan remained for another 3 days. During those 3 days, he finally had the opportunity to visit every corner of the Lion Garden. From time to time, anxiety would quietly surface on Liu Qingshan's face. Whenever that happened, he would seek Chen Pingyan out and invite him to drink. Chen Pingyan understood that the source of this unease lay within the Liu clan itself, specifically in matters concerning Liu Qingqing. But family affairs were family affairs. Chen Pingyan had no intention of forcing himself into matters where he did not belong. During this time, Liu Boqi visited Chen Pingyan's small courtyard twice. The first visit concerned the mountain lord Lady Liu Shu.
I beat that mountain lord half to death. She should remember to perform her duties properly for the next 100 years.
There was no boasting in Liu Boqi's tone. She stated the matter as casually as someone reporting that a door had been repaired. Her second visit was for something far more practical, dividing the spoils. Naturally, Liu Boqi could not simply draw Jing God and split the treasure creation demon into two equal halves. An Earth Immortal treasure creation demon was itself an extraordinary opportunity. If properly nurtured and trained, such a being possessed an enormous chance of eventually attaining the Great Tao. Of course, raising one required immense quantities of immortal currency and fated opportunities. Anyone unwilling to bear that cost could simply kill the demon and harvest the treasures condensed through its existence, which would still yield a tremendous profit. This was the brutal arithmetic of cultivation. A rare life could be a future companion, an investment in the Great Tao, or merely a treasury waiting to be opened. The value remained the same, only the cultivator's choice changed the ending. In the end, Liu Boqi calculated Chen Ping'an's share and converted it into grain rain coins. After she left, master and disciple sat opposite one another at the table. Between Chen Ping'an and Pei Qian stood a small mountain of grain rain coins. Pei Qian's smile was dazzling. Chen Ping'an was grinning almost as widely. He reached over and patted her head.
Then I won't twist your ears anymore.
Huh.
Chen Ping'an gave no explanation. He bent over the table, folded his arms beneath his head, and stared happily at the glittering heap of grain rain coins. Pei Qian straightened her back and folded her arms. She quickly forgot about his mysterious comment.
Master, I didn't lose money for you this time, did I?
Chen Ping'an sat upright again, smiling as he reached across the table and squeezed Pei Qian's cheeks. Near the doorway, Julian was reading a book with complete concentration. He had reached an especially gripping passage and seemed utterly unwilling to tear his eyes away from the page. At that moment, he found himself missing Senior Shun a little. Shiro glanced at the book in Julian's hands. One glance was enough to nearly anger her to death. Then came Chen Ping'an's final morning in the Lion Garden. Soon after the first ray of sunlight crept above the horizon, and just before Chen Ping'an and his companions were due to depart for the capital of the Azure Phoenix Nation, Liu Boqi arrived alone at the courtyard. In her hand was the small golden block from Liu Qingshan's study. Without changing expression, she offered it to Chen Ping'an.
Assistant Minister Liu agreed to this from the beginning, so this treasure now belongs to you. If you refine this small golden block into a bonded item, it will be extraordinarily beneficial. It contains not only the remaining fortune of a fallen mortal empire, but also several hundred years of scholarly fortune accumulated by the Liu clan while the treasure rested inside the Lion Garden. The treasure is useless to me, but for you, Chen Ping'an, a half-assed scholar, it could be extremely valuable if you successfully refine it. Most importantly, even if you already possess a bonded item of the metal element, you can still refine this treasure. It can elevate the quality of your original bonded item, allowing you to achieve twice the result with half the effort in your future cultivation.
In cultivation terms, this was no ordinary gift. It was not merely wealth, nor simply another artifact. It could strengthen the foundation of Chen Ping'an's future path while bypassing the usual conflict between bonded items of the same element. For many qi refiners, refusing such an opportunity would be nearly unimaginable. Chen Ping'an accepted the exquisite golden object and quietly examined it for a short while. Then he extended his hand and returned it.
Help me secretly put it back in Liu Qingshan's study. Don't place it anywhere conspicuous.
Liu Boqi frowned.
You don't want it. Or do you think I'm lying to you, though you believe the treasure isn't as useful as I said?
Chen Ping'an could not be bothered explaining. He called for Pei Qian, who was already carrying her luggage sack and gripping her hiking pole. Master and disciple left the courtyard together and stepped onto one of the Lion Garden's quiet paths. Liu Boqi remained behind. Then, unexpectedly, the cold-faced Daoist nun cracked a grin. If Chen Ping'an had accepted that golden block, Liu Boqi would have drawn her saber and killed him. The gift had secretly been a test with killing intent hidden behind it. Liu Boqi was willing to acknowledge Chen Pingyan's contribution, but she would not permit him to profit by taking away something tied to Liu Qingshan's future. The difference between deserved reward and unacceptable greed was only a single decision. Yet one question remained even in Liu Boqi's mind. Why had Chen Pingyan refused a treasure so valuable that he could rightfully have claimed it? Had he sensed the hidden killing intent and retreated out of caution? Or had he genuinely refused for some reason of his own? Liu Boqi did not ponder it for long. The golden block remained with the Liu clan. That was enough. Whatever lay inside Chen Pingyan's heart was no longer her concern. Outside, Pei Qian skipped along beside Chen Pingyan while he practiced his 6-step walking meditation. Her curiosity soon overwhelmed her.
Master, why didn't you take that small golden block? It looked really nice. And that Daoist nun listed so many benefits.
Chen Pingyan continued advancing step by step, throwing punches in rhythm with his walking meditation. A faint smile touched his face.
The scholarly fortune of the Liu clan is closely bound to that treasure. If I took it away, what would happen to Liu Qingshan? Besides, he gave you a book.
Pei Qian thought about this carefully before nodding.
Uncle Cripple is already pitiful enough. We really should let him keep the treasure.
After saying this, Pei Qian began practicing walking meditation alongside her master. Chen Pingyan's answer also resolved Liu Boqi's hidden question. He had not rejected the treasure because he feared her saber. He rejected it because, in his view, taking what strengthened his own path while weakening Liu Qingshan's would violate a boundary he was unwilling to cross, even when nobody had explicitly forbidden him from crossing it. After some time, Pei Qian suddenly chuckled.
Master, is this what people mean when they say, a noble person does not seize another person's favored possession?
Chen Pingyan kept training. His feet did not stop, and neither did his fists. He shook his head.
I'm still very far from becoming a noble scholar.
How far as the Lion Garden is from here?
Perhaps even farther than the distance from the lotus flower blessed land to the Lion Garden.
That far away.
Indeed.
Pei Qian refused to be discouraged.
But master, no matter how far it is, you'll eventually reach it, right?
That's right. But there is one condition. We cannot stray from the correct path.
This was perhaps the quietest yet most important line of the entire episode. For Chen Pingyan, becoming a noble scholar was not a title waiting at the end of cultivation. It was a direction. Distance mattered less than whether each step continued to point toward the same destination. And perhaps this is why Fu Sheng could praise him, while another scholar remained unconvinced. One man judged Chen Pingyan by where he currently stood. The other may have been watching where his feet were pointed. Pei Qian suddenly stopped walking. She stood there quietly for a moment while Julian and Shiru passed her. Then she slipped one hand behind her back and lightly clenched it into a fist. A moment later, she ran toward Julian with a huge smile.
Do you want to know what I'm hiding in my hand?
Scram.
Julian's expression was dark enough to kill the game immediately. Undeterred, Pei Qian turned toward Shiro and thrust her little fist forward instead.
Big sister Shiro, why don't you guess? If you guess correctly, I'll give it to you as a present.
Shiro answered with nothing more than an eye roll. Behind them, Chen Pingyan was secretly chuckling. Then Pei Qian suddenly turned her broad smile toward him. Chen Pingyan instantly recognized danger. Before Pei Qian could utter a single word, he shuffled over and rewarded her with a knuckle straight to the forehead. The Lion Garden had begun with demons, killing intent, hidden schemes, and earth immortal danger. Yet it ended with a master walking his chosen path, a disciple trying to understand his principles, and a harmless little fist hiding behind her back. In a world where great Tao could be discussed through swords and sabers, perhaps these ordinary moments were also part of cultivation. Morning mist still clung to the countryside when Chen Ping'an and his companions finally left the narrow path leading away from the lion garden. Beyond them lay a small lake, its surface half hidden beneath a broad sea of green reeds. Past the water, the road curved once, split again, and eventually joined the official highway, stretching toward the capital of the Azure Phoenix Nation. Yet before they could reach that highway, trouble came rattling toward them on 4 wooden wheels. An ox-drawn carriage had just turned off the official road and entered the narrow fork. The road was uneven, filled with pits and loose earth, and the carriage immediately began bouncing as though caught in a storm. A man dressed in azure sat at the rear, jolted so violently that he nearly flew from his seat. After several savage bumps, his face had already gone blank from shock, and it seemed as though every bone in his body had been shaken loose. Holding the reins was a young, scholarly attendant. Judging from his frantic expression, his master had probably urged him to hurry for most of the journey. Unfortunately, haste had been placed in the hands of inexperience. The boy was still young, careless by nature, and clearly no veteran at controlling an ox carriage. The old ox therefore charged down the little road with unexpected enthusiasm, dragging carriage, servant, and master behind it like 3 participants in a disaster none of them had agreed to. Then the scholarly attendant saw people emerging from the path beside the reeds. And at the very front was Pei Qian, hiking pole in hand, skipping forward with all the carefree energy of someone who had absolutely no idea that an ox-drawn calamity was bearing down upon her. The young attendant instantly panicked. His hands flew everywhere as he tried to wrench the ox back onto a safe course. The man in azure became even more alarmed and shouted a warning at the top of his lungs. Pei Qian's eyes widened. The carriage swerved left, then right, then left again. Finally, with astonishing determination, the old ox dragged the 2 flustered fools straight off the road and into the reed-filled lake. In truth, Pei Qian had already leapt aside at the very beginning. She now stood safely atop a thick cluster of reeds. Even if the carriage had maintained its original direction, it would never have touched her. For a brief moment, however, Pei Qian simply watched the doomed carriage with great curiosity. Were these 2 people perhaps trying to swim before breakfast? Or were they hidden immortals, riding an extraordinary ox capable of pulling a carriage across water? After all, she herself had once ridden a mysterious yellow earth bull. That creature could climb mountains and cross rivers while remaining so steady that sitting on its back felt safer than walking on level ground. This ox unfortunately possessed no such immortal dignity. The man in azure and his attendant screamed as the carriage plunged into the lake with a tremendous splash. Water erupted above the reeds, and in the next instant, man, servant, ox, and carriage all vanished beneath the surface. Pei Qian shuffled to the edge of the road and peered down the newly carved trail through the reeds. There was nothing to see. The ox had bulldozed a path directly into the water and disappeared. She pinched her chin thoughtfully. She had once heard of water-repelling jewels, treasures that allowed mountain immortals to enter rivers and seas as easily as walking across dry land, even when hunting flood dragons. Perhaps this was something similar. Julian and Shiru clearly had less faith in the ox's cultivation. Without hesitation, the 2 rushed into the lake to rescue everyone. Chen Ping'an, meanwhile, reached out and caught Pei Qian by the ear.
I told you to be careful and watch where you were going.
Pei Qian immediately rose onto her toes, face twisting as she begged for mercy.
How could I have known that ox wouldn't walk straight? It was staggering around like someone drunk! Left, right, left again, and then it staggered itself straight into the lake! Oh, master, it hurts. Master, I really did move aside! You've seen ox carriages and mule carriages before. Aren't they usually terribly slow? But this one was terrifying! It looked as if it wanted to charge into the sky and start flying.
Chen Ping'an finally released her ear and ordered her to remain where she was. Pei Qian obeyed at once. She stood perfectly still while rubbing her reddened ear and baring her teeth from the pain. In her mind, there could only be one explanation for this misfortune. Julian had warned her earlier not to become too pleased with herself. Clearly, the old cook had jinxed her again. Chen Ping'an quietly exhaled when Julian and Shiru soon emerged from the lake. Between the two of them, they managed to recover the young attendant, the man in azure, the old ox, and even the battered carriage. The scholarly attendant collapsed onto the flattened reeds, his face pale from lingering terror. The moment his feet touched solid ground, he began crying uncontrollably. The old ox shook itself violently beside him. Water sprayed in every direction, and its tail happened to smack the young attendant across the head. The boy instantly stopped crying. The man in azure appeared to be around 30. Once Shiru pulled him safely onto the bank, he immediately bowed in gratitude. Chen Ping'an approached as well, cupping his fists and apologizing for the frightening encounter. The man in azure looked deeply embarrassed. After all, it had been his own carriage that had nearly caused the accident. He hurriedly returned the courtesy with another bow. Then he wiped the lake water from his face, studied Chen Ping'an more carefully, and his eyes suddenly brightened.
Are you young Master Chen, one who saved the lion garden together with the Daoist nun and those esteemed immortals?
Chen Ping'an nodded, then looked at the man with a hint of uncertainty.
Are you County Magistrate Liu?
The man burst into hearty laughter.
Indeed. I am Liu Qingfeng, Liu Qingshan's elder brother.
Liu Qingfeng was the eldest son of Liu Jingting, the former assistant minister. He currently governed a county. His career could hardly be called meteoric, yet neither had it been troubled. In officialdom, he had advanced steadily and without major disaster. Placed beside his father, however, Liu Qingfeng seemed painfully ordinary. At roughly the same age, Liu Jingting had already stood near the threshold of becoming assistant minister of the Ministry of Rights, a third-rank position in the Azure Phoenix Nation. Liu Jingting had also been acknowledged as a leader of the literary world, a scholar whose reputation for learning and decorum extended far beyond his official title. Against such a towering shadow, even a respectable eldest son could easily appear mediocre. This was the burden of being born beneath a famous name. Liu Qingfeng had not failed, yet the standard used to judge him had never been the standard applied to ordinary officials. His achievements were measured against Liu Jingting's legend, and by that measure, simple competence looked like disappointment. There was little doubt that when Liu Jingting eventually passed away, the imperial court would grant him one of its highest posthumous honors. The true debate lay in exactly which characters the emperor would bestow upon his name, whether they would praise uprightness, loyalty, dutiful service, or accomplishment. Earlier, many court officials had believed the supreme scholarly honor associated with uprightness was most likely. After Liu Qingshan became crippled, however, confidence in that expectation cooled. Such an exalted posthumous judgment had always been exceptionally rare. Eventually, some officials even began wondering whether the slightly lesser honor associated with scholarly loyalty could still be guaranteed. In the world of scholars, a family's fortune was not judged only by cultivation, wealth, or office. Reputation itself could become an inheritance, and sometimes an invisible chain. The rise or fall of one son could alter how generations interpreted the father's entire life. Chen Ping'an called Pei Qian over. A moment earlier she had been standing rigidly in place, as though an immobilizing talisman had been pasted onto her forehead. The instant she heard her master call her name, she hurried over with the relief of a condemned prisoner receiving a pardon. Pei Qian bowed to Liu Qingfeng and the young attendant, then loudly confessed every mistake she could think of, arranging them into such an impressive list that one might have believed she had committed a crime against the entire Azure Phoenix Nation. Deep down, however, she did not believe she had done anything terribly wrong. If anything, she secretly thought County Magistrate Liu had been far too incapable at controlling his own carriage. Still, her master was displeased. What choice did she have? An apology cost nothing. And even if Chen Ping'an had ordered her to surrender silver coins, or, heaven forbid, something from her treasured little box, she would have gritted her teeth and obeyed. Liu Qingfeng quickly waved his hands, insisting that the little girl had already moved aside and should not be blamed so harshly. Only then did Pei Qian's mood improve. In her private judgment, this county magistrate suddenly seemed much smarter and more reasonable than before. Liu Qingfeng naturally invited Chen Ping'an and the others to return with him to the Lion Garden. Yet, Chen Ping'an explained that he still wished to continue toward the capital, hoping to catch the final portion of the great debate between Buddhism and Daoism. Hearing this, Liu Qingfeng did not press the matter. He was too courteous to delay another man's journey for the sake of his own hospitality. Before leaving, Chen Ping'an helped repair the damaged ox carriage. Only after the wheels and frame were made serviceable did the two groups finally part, one returning toward the Lion Garden and the other continuing toward the capital. Once they had entered the official road, Julian glanced back and smiled.
I feel that Assistant Minister Liu's eldest son, Liu Qingfeng, is actually better suited to officialdom than his younger brother, Liu Qingshan.
Chen Ping'an offered no judgment. Liu Qingshan possessed a stronger scholarly air. He was more talented, more strategic, and perhaps more visibly upright and noble. His elder brother Liu Qingfeng lacked that same brilliance. He seemed softer around the edges, more ordinary, and far more mellow. Yet Chen Ping'an believed the world had need of both kinds of scholars. One man might be sharp enough to see 10 moves ahead, and stubborn enough to defend principle, even when the road collapsed beneath him. Another might possess the patience to bend, negotiate, endure, and keep ordinary people's affairs moving day after day. Neither virtue erased the other. As for which brother would eventually climb higher, perhaps that question mattered less than outsiders imagined. Both were sons of the Lion Garden's Liu clan, and both would carry their family's name in different ways. After walking for a while, Chen Ping'an suddenly turned to Pei Qian.
Pei Qian, do you know what was most admirable about County Magistrate Liu?
Pei Qian answered almost immediately.
He has a good temper and he isn't arrogant even though he's an official.
Chen Ping'an shook his head.
No, what mattered most was that when he thought the carriage might strike you, his first intention was genuinely to move out of your way, even if doing so placed himself in danger.
That was the lesson Chen Ping'an wanted Pei Qian to remember. Cultivation could strengthen the body, officials could gain authority, and scholars could accumulate fame. But character often revealed itself in a single instant, before calculation had time to interfere. Liu Qingfeng's carriage had gone into the lake because his first reaction was not to protect himself, but to avoid harming a child. Pei Qian nodded. Her face showed that she understood part of the lesson, while the rest still floated somewhere beyond her grasp.
Master, I'll remember it. Just like those books in bamboo slips I spread out under the sun at the Lion Garden. Every now and then, I'll take these things back out in my head, turn them over, and think about them again.
Chen Ping'an nodded and gently patted her head. He said nothing more. For Pei Qian, many teachings were still only seeds. Chen Ping'an rarely demanded that they blossom immediately. He simply planted them, one after another, trusting that experience would eventually provide the rain. Julian, who had been listening from nearby, suddenly smiled.
Young master, how about I spar with you from now on, and help temper your martial arts?
Sure.
Chen Ping'an agreed without the slightest hesitation. Julian immediately turned toward Pei Qian, as if he had just obtained the perfect example for a lesson.
See, that was a sincere answer from the bottom of his heart. When pure martial artists truly spar, deliberately holding back brings almost no benefit. If training is to matter, I must use genuine strength. And once I use genuine strength, killing intent naturally enters my fists, while murderous pressure naturally gathers around my body. If I truly intended to murder young master, I could instead conceal that killing intent extremely well. Yet even knowing this, young master still chose to trust me. That is what it means to answer sincerity with sincerity.
Julian's explanation touched the heart of martial training. A true spar between experts could not be reduced to harmless movements. Pressure had to be real enough to force instinct, judgment, and courage into action. Yet, that also meant both sides placed something precious in the other's hands, trust. For Chen Ping'an, who had survived countless situations where hidden malice mattered more than visible strength, agreeing so quickly said a great deal about how deeply he trusted Julian. Pei Qian considered the explanation very seriously. Then, naturally, she reached an entirely different conclusion.
Old cook, when you were reading at the Lion Garden every day, weren't you always muttering that having no money in your pockets made your heart panic? If we reach the capital, and you don't have enough silver to buy all those novels you've been dreaming about, won't your heart hurt terribly? You even said the Azure Phoenix Nation was famous for certain scandalous illustrated books, and that entering a mountain of treasures only to leave empty-handed would be a terrible shame. Tell me the truth. Are you offering to spar with Master because you want to trick him into giving you silver so you can buy those books?
Julian's carefully constructed lesson collapsed on the spot. Embarrassment appeared across the old servant's face. He rubbed his hands together and, for once, discovered that silence was the wisest martial technique available. Chen Ping'an made his decision immediately.
You can spar with me and help me train, but I'm not paying you any silver.
Julian immediately became anxious.
But young master, we left the Lion Garden with such a rich harvest exclamation. This old servant may not have contributed very much this time, but heaven and earth can bear witness to my loyalty.
Chen Ping'an looked at Pei Qian.
You explain it.
Pei Qian cleared her throat. Her posture immediately became solemn, as though she were about to announce an imperial decree.
No silver for you! Once silver enters my master's pockets, it stops being silver.
Walking behind the three of them, Shiru could only sigh inwardly. They had just escaped an earth-immortal demon, helped settle the Lion Garden's crisis, discussed the character of scholars, and touched upon the dangerous sincerity required between martial artists. Yet in the end, the greatest conflict on the road to the capital had somehow become Julian's attempt to pry a few silver coins from Chen Ping'an. Perhaps that was precisely what made this group so memorable. Mountains could change, enemies could change, and the martial world could turn upside down overnight. But Chen Ping'an, Pei Qian, and Julian would still find a way to quarrel over silver before the dust had even settled. Rainwater still clung to their robes as the ox-drawn carriage rolled through the countryside. The young scholarly attendant grumbled almost the entire journey, pouring complaint after complaint toward Liu Qingfeng. Yet Liu Qingfeng neither argued nor invoked his authority as a county magistrate to silence him. He simply listened. After they passed the weathered stone cliff and the ancient trees, the silhouette of Lion Garden finally appeared ahead. The attendant's complaints immediately died away. This was the place where he had grown up, the home of countless childhood memories, and also the home of Zhao Ya, the childhood friend for whom he had always possessed a special fondness. Within the Liu clan, Liu Qingfeng belonged to the Qing generation and was one of former Assistant Minister Liu Jingting's 5 children. From eldest to youngest, the final characters of their names were Feng, Ya, Shan, Qing, and Yu. Once inside the estate, Liu Qingfeng changed into dry clothes and wasted no time. The young attendant had already told him that his father was waiting in Liu Qingshan's study. Soon, father and son sat facing one another. The instant Liu Jingting saw his eldest son, the old official seemed to shed an invisible mountain from his shoulders. The relief in his heart was no less profound than when he had personally watched the terrifying demon of Lion Garden finally subdued. To outsiders, this reaction would have seemed excessive. Chen Ping'an, Liu Boqi, and even the esteemed immortals who had crossed Lion Garden's gates might have assumed Liu Jingting was the pillar holding the clan upright, but the truth was far quieter. The real backbone of Lion Garden had gradually become Liu Qingfeng, a county magistrate of modest rank and a scholar whose talent appeared unremarkable at first glance. Liu Boqi had once secretly observed the father and two sons drinking and discussing affairs together, yet her attention had fallen mostly upon Liu Qingshan, so she had never truly weighed the significance of their conversations. Nor had Liu Qingfeng deliberately maneuvered himself into authority. There had been no manipulation, no calculated seizure of influence. The change had taken place little by little, through years of decisions, burdens, and responsibility, until one day the father and younger brother simply found themselves relying upon him. Liu Qingfeng's strength did not lie in dazzling literary talent or immortal cultivation. It lay in pragmatism. He valued outcomes, understood consequences, and habitually looked several moves beyond the present moment. In a scholarly clan facing both court politics and mountain cultivators, that kind of mind could be more valuable than a sword. Long before Liu Qingshan became deeply involved in family affairs, Liu Qingfeng had already accompanied Liu Jingting during his years as an official in the capital of the Azure Phoenix Nation. He had functioned almost like an advisor at his father's side, witnessing the rise and fall of factions and learning how currents beneath the imperial court could shift without warning.
I've already carefully read the letter father sent to the county office.
Liu Qingfeng smiled as he spoke, then turned that same smile toward Liu Qingshan. For some reason, the younger brother immediately became uneasy. Then, Liu Qingfeng suddenly burst into laughter.
Brother.
Liu Qingshan's expression carried obvious embarrassment, while their father watched the exchange with mixed amusement and worry.
If I had listened to you earlier regarding Lady Liu Shu and spoken openly with her, perhaps our relationship would not have become so strained.
Father, whether we are speaking of how people conduct themselves or how a deity receives incense, their actions ultimately arise from their fundamental nature. A few sincere words from us could never have changed everything, even if we had tried our utmost to persuade Lady Liu Shu. The disaster that descended upon Lion Garden would probably still have come. Fortunately, Lady Liu Shu shares both the glory and humiliation of Lion Garden and the Liu clan. This calamity may serve as a warning to her as well. And since we managed to obtain fortune from misfortune, we must thank gallant young Master Chen. We should also thank the Daoist nun Qingshan knows. Liu, what was her name again?
Liu Boqi exclamation. Would you stop already, brother?
The teasing vanished from Liu Qingfeng's face. In a heartbeat, the elder brother became the calculating magistrate once more.
Do you genuinely like her?
Liu Qingshan looked away. Faced with demons, ancestral pressure, and even death, he could stand upright. Yet before this simple question from his older brother, embarrassment left him searching the room for somewhere to rest his gaze.
That Daoist nun is a mountain cultivator. After all, for the help she gave us in subduing the demon, our gratitude can never be exhausted. But this concerns your younger brother's marriage, something that may determine the rest of his life. Everything is tangled together now.
Liu Jingting had once served as assistant minister in the Azure Phoenix Nation's Ministry of Rites. He had dealt with mountain powers, official immortals, and wandering cultivators before. The Imperial Tang clan itself had always taken a relatively assertive stance toward immortals, so Liu Jingting was hardly a timid mortal official. Yet even the most upright official could find himself helpless before matters of family. Liu Qingfeng gave his father a quiet look, signaling that he understood the weight of what he was about to say. Then he turned fully toward Liu Qingshan.
Qingshan, I trust you. If you say that you like Liu Boqi, then I believe those feelings are genuine. You have your own judgment regarding her appearance, her origins, and her character. I won't interfere with those judgments, nor will I tell either of you how you should behave. But suppose Liu Boqi, a Daoist nun from another continent, truly marries into Lion Garden and becomes your wife. There are two matters we cannot avoid considering. First, she is a cultivator. Naturally, we would never force her to concern herself with mundane household trivialities. But would she willingly remain in Lion Garden, cultivate here, and truly live alongside you as husband and wifer? After enough time passes, would she begin to see herself first as a superior cultivator of the mountains, placing herself above you regardless of the issue? And, if that happened, would she eventually interfere with Lion Garden's affairs? Second, has she ever hinted that she wants you to cultivate immortal techniques with her? Has she ever wanted you to abandon your sagely texts, leave Lion Garden, and follow her into the mountains?
These questions were cold, but they were not born from contempt for Liu Boqi. Liu Qingfeng was dissecting a problem exactly as he would dissect an affair of state. A mortal scholarly clan and a mountain cultivator did not merely possess different lifespans and powers. They could possess entirely different assumptions about duty, family, freedom, and authority.
When affection first begins, everything looks beautiful. It resembles Lion Garden itself, green mountains, clear water, a paradise seemingly sheltered from the world. But consider Lady Liu Shu. For 7 generations, the Liu clan respected her, revered her, formed karmic ties with her, and offered her incense. Yet when calamity truly came, how did she behave? If she had not been bound to this land, she might very well have abandoned the Liu clan and fled. And when we were hiding inside the ancestral hall, what did she say before the memorial tablets of our ancestors? Were those words not deeply insulting? So I am not telling you to abandon Liu Boqi. I only want you to understand that the mountains and the world beyond them are different. Descendants of scholarly clans and mountain cultivators often see the same world through completely different eyes. If the two of you marry, who will adapt to whom? Will Liu Boqi accommodate you, or will you accommodate Liu Boqi? Have you considered this? And if you have you truly considered it carefully? She is a tremendous benefactor of our Liu clan. She subdued the demon when our family stood on the edge of destruction, and afterward she even gave us an enormous amount of wealth in immortal coins. But Qingshan, there is one thing you must understand. The debt belongs to the Liu clan. Father, I, and everyone in Lion Garden will repay it together. You do not need to repay Liu Boqi by yourself. If 1 generation cannot repay her kindness, then 2 generations will. If 2 are insufficient, then 3. We can continue for as many generations as necessary, provided Liu Boqi is willing to wait.
That was perhaps the heart of Liu Qingfeng's argument. Gratitude and marriage could coexist, but they could not be allowed to become the same thing. In his eyes, marrying someone out of debt would merely transform gratitude into another form of burden. Liu Qingfeng sighed, his sternness finally softening.
Don't blame me for sounding worldly, and don't think I'm merely projecting our own flaws onto others. The more carefully we think today, the fewer regrets we may face tomorrow. Put simply, I want you, Liu Qingshan, to live happily. Of course, I have selfish reasons as well. Your elder brother knows his own limitations. I am not capable of preserving all the scholarship, traditions, and principles accumulated by our Lion Garden's Liu clan. For those things, we still need you.
Liu Qingshan rose. Because of his crippled leg, his shoulders appeared slightly uneven, yet his expression had become unexpectedly relaxed.
Then I'll go ask her directly.
That answer was unmistakably Liu Qingshan. Where Liu Qingfeng measured possibilities, Liu Qingshan preferred sincerity. Instead of building conclusions from speculation, he would carry the question straight to Liu Boqi herself. Whether that was naivety or courage depended entirely on what waited ahead. A complicated emotion crossed Liu Qingfeng's eyes.
There are countless deities and immortals beneath heaven. Don't worry, Qingshan. We will find a way to heal your legs. Your elder brother promises you this.
Liu Qingshan merely took those words as the consolation of an older brother. He smiled, bowed farewell, and left the study. But Liu Jingting was no ordinary old man. Years in the imperial court had sharpened his instincts, and no one understood Liu Qingfeng's maturity, ambition, and breadth of mind better than his own father. The moment the study door closed behind Liu Qingshan, Liu Jingting's expression shifted. Liu Qingfeng suddenly looked exhausted.
On my way back, I happened to encounter Chen Ping'an.
Liu Jingting suppressed the fear that stirred within him.
What did you think of him?
He's an extremely rare kind of mountain cultivator. In truth, he resembles a legitimate scholar, raised by some wealthy scholarly clan, more than he resembles the immortals people usually imagine.
That is indeed the case.
Liu Qingfeng seemed about to say more, but hesitation stopped him. Liu Jingting rose and placed one hand upon his eldest son's shoulder.
There is no need to treat your own family like strangers and hide everything inside your heart. Qingshan will understand your intentions one day. As for your father, I don't believe you're wrong, but neither do I believe you're completely right.
For once, Liu Qingfeng looked downcast.
Go see Qingqing. She has always been close with Qingshan, but with you, she feels both respect and fear. Precisely because of that, certain things may carry more weight if they come from you.
I'll remain here a little longer. Afterward, I'll visit my 2 teachers. Once I'm done there, I'll go to Qingqing's residence.
That's how it should be.
The former assistant minister departed first, leaving Liu Qingfeng alone in his younger brother's study. Liu Qingfeng slowly turned toward a couplet hanging upon the wall. 1,000 soldiers form beneath my brush. 10,000 cavalry charge through my poems. Uphold virtue to stand beside the sages. Gather books so knowledge may descend to our heirs. Those words had not been written by Liu Qingshan, despite this being his study. Liu Qingfeng himself had composed them and given them to his younger brother during Qingshan's coming-of-age ceremony. Seen now, the couplet carried almost prophetic weight. Liu Qingfeng had long understood that his younger brother possessed something Lion Garden needed, perhaps not political cunning, but the capacity to inherit a scholarly spirit that could survive beyond one generation. That was exactly why his earlier words had contained both brotherly affection and ruthless calculation. Melancholy lingered upon Liu Qingfeng's face as he finally left the study and headed toward the Liu clan's private school. He intended to visit the old scholar Fu Sheng and the middle-aged scholar Mr. Liu. Fu Sheng was nowhere to be found, leaving only Mr. Liu inside the school. Liu Qingfeng seized the chance to ask several questions concerning scholarly study before politely taking his leave. Only after Liu Qingfeng's footsteps had vanished did another figure suddenly materialize within the private school. It was Fu Sheng.
Teacher, Liu Qingfeng is dragging Liu Qingshan into the whirlpool between the three teachings within the Azure Phoenix Nation. Is what he's doing right or wrong?
Fu Sheng merely smiled.
Hasn't someone said it? Before the matters of yesterday ended yesterday, and the matters of tomorrow begin today. What is considered right or wrong today may not remain right or wrong tomorrow. Ultimately, everything depends upon the person walking the path. Besides, this is a private matter of the Liu clan. I may as well use the opportunity to see how much of those sagely texts Liu Qingshan has truly absorbed. A scholar's integrity and moral courage are not refined while sitting comfortably beneath a lamp. They are tempered by hardship.
The middle-aged scholar felt somewhat helpless. His teacher was seemingly borrowing Buddhist principles to evaluate a Confucian disciple. Hardly something that conformed neatly to etiquette. Yet how lofty was Fu Sheng's status within the orthodox Confucian temple of Middle-earth Divine Continent? Mr. Liu also knew that his teacher's vision extended extraordinarily far. Unless Liu Qingshan truly strayed from the proper path of the Great Tao, Fu Sheng would not lightly interfere. In other words, Liu Qingshan's suffering was not merely suffering anymore. Without realizing it, he had already entered an examination whose examiner stood far above Lion Garden. Back inside the ancestral hall, when Lady Liu Shu had spoken harshly before the memorial tablets, Liu Qingshan had stepped forward and answered her. Had he remained silent on that day, he might have continued believing that Mr. Fu and Mr. Liu were merely two teachers who had happened to spend several years instructing students within Lion Garden. And then one day, the two scholars would simply have disappeared without explanation, never to appear before him again. Such were many fated opportunities beneath heaven. They did not always arrive wrapped in immortal light or accompanied by heavenly phenomena. Sometimes a great opportunity appeared disguised as an argument, a humiliation, an impossible choice, or a moment when nobody seemed to be watching. Different immortal clans and schools possessed different methods of choosing disciples. Their requirements varied, their rewards differed, and the opportunities they offered could be enormous or seemingly insignificant. But at the core, the same principle remained. The person being examined had to seize the opportunity with their own hands. Daoist immortals were particularly fond of such examinations. Compared with Fu Sheng's almost effortless method of observing Liu Qingshan as events naturally unfolded, Daoist trials could be painstakingly designed and brutally intricate. Glory and humiliation, life and death, family and love, attachment and temptation, any of these might become part of the trial. Some legendary examinations recorded throughout history had lasted an astonishing length of time, even involving reincarnation or entire journeys through blessed lands. Those were the kinds of stories capable of shaking the soul. Then Fu Sheng suddenly spoke again.
Truthfully, Liu Qingshan would be a suitable candidate to become your direct disciple.
Mr. Liu shook his head.
I know his character is decent. His ambitions are lofty, and he's capable of properly handling tedious responsibilities. Unfortunately, he is not suited to inheriting my minor branch of knowledge.
Fu Sheng smiled and said nothing more. There was a truth he did not reveal. Was teaching truly only a one-way road, where a disciple respectfully received everything from a master? Could a disciple not also expose the limitations of the master's learning, repair its flaws, and push that knowledge somewhere the master had never reached? But principles of this kind were useless if simply handed down by an outsider. The person involved had to arrive at the understanding themselves. Long ago, the paramount sage had worried that Confucian knowledge might climb higher and higher until the sages themselves seemed impossibly distant from ordinary mortals. If scholarship became too lofty to touch the human world, then what would become of that world? The etiquette sage, the second sage, Fu Sheng, and the two assistant sages of Confucianism had each offered their own answers to this dilemma. Yet the paramount sage's brows had remained tightly furrowed. Then an impoverished old scholar had appeared almost from nowhere and risen through the ranks of Confucianism with astonishing speed. That had been a brilliant age for the Confucian sect. The old scholar participated in two great debates between the three teachings. During those clashes of doctrine, even several innate bodhisattvas and Tao seeds from among the most talented Buddhist monks and Daoist priests resolutely crossed over to Confucianism. During one such debate, a young immortal from White Jade Capital posed a razor-sharp question.
If Confucianism claims that human nature is fundamentally good at birth, meaning everyone already possesses perfect goodness from the beginning, then what exactly is Confucian education supposed to teach or enlighten?
That question struck directly at the foundation of a school of thought. If goodness already existed within humanity, what purpose did sages serve? And if sages rose so high that ordinary people could no longer reach them, could their teachings still remain alive? These were not merely philosophical games. In Unsheathed, questions of scholarship often determine how people choose to live, govern, cultivate, and confront the world. Back inside the private school, Mr. Liu suddenly raised another possibility.
What if Liu Qingshan first travels a long road alongside Daoist nun Liu Boqi of the Daoist Saber Room, and eventually the two become husband and wife?
Old scholar Fu Sheng. Great sage smiled.
Why should that matter the divisions between the three teachings concern disagreements of scholarship? They need not become shackles binding every human relationship.
Mr. Liu found himself puzzled yet again. Fu Sheng then revealed something far more consequential.
Liu Qingfeng has more or less guessed our true identities already. And precisely because Lion Garden now possesses a backup plan and a path of retreat, Liu Qingfeng has dared to place this wager of scholarly fortune against the great Lai Empire's embroidered tiger.
At that moment, Liu Qingfeng's earlier conversation with his brother took on an entirely different meaning. He was not merely worrying about marriage. He was positioning Liu Qingshan within a struggle touching the three teachings, scholarly inheritance, and the designs of Pei Qian, the embroidered tiger himself. The crippled scholar who believed he was simply going to ask Liu Boqi a question had unknowingly stepped onto a far larger board. Mr. Liu gave a cold snort. Fu Sheng, however, only sighed with emotion.
If the old scholar had possessed more disciples like Pei Qian and Liu Qingshan back then, perhaps he would not have lost. At the very least, he would not have lost so completely, or so miserably.
And with those words, the peaceful study halls of Lion Garden seemed to open onto a battlefield far greater than any demon hunt. Liu Qingshan's love, Liu Qingfeng's calculation, Fu Sheng's observation, and Pei Qian's distant designs were beginning to converge. The next contest would not necessarily be fought with sabers or flying swords. It might be fought with choices, and in the world of scholars, a single choice can redirect an entire lineage. Outside Liu Qingqing's residence, Liu Qingfeng stood in silence beneath the eaves and instructed. Maidservant Xiaoya to bring his younger sister downstairs. The Lion Garden had survived a terrifying demonic calamity, yet some wounds left by the slug demon had not vanished with its defeat. The deepest of them were wounds hidden inside the heart. Xiaoya hesitated. During the past few days, Liu Qingqing had gradually learned the truth, and every revelation had struck her like another blade. The cruelest blow was learning that her second brother, Liu Qingshan, had been crippled because of what happened to her. Overwhelmed by guilt and grief, she had even considered ending her own life. If Xianxia had not noticed the danger in time, and quietly removed the scissors and other sharp objects from the room, the lion garden might have gone from surviving disaster to mourning another tragedy. From that moment onward, Xianxia scarcely left her young mistress's side, accompanying her through every hour of the day and night. Liu Qingfeng had grown even thinner and paler than when the slug demon had tormented the estate. Her former vitality seemed to have been drained away, leaving behind a frail figure, crushed beneath guilt that no medicine could easily cure. The demon had attacked Lion Garden from the outside, but guilt was now devouring Liu Qingfeng from within. That was a battlefield no saber or talisman could simply cut apart.
Tell her to come downstairs.
His voice was calm, neither harsh nor comforting, yet Xianxia immediately felt the pressure behind those few words. She hurried upstairs to inform Liu Qingfeng. Before long, Liu Qingfeng timidly descended the stairs. She was so uneasy that she did not even dare to let Xianxia support her arm. Liu Qingfeng looked at his younger sister once, then remained silent. Liu Qingfeng lowered her head. Fear and panic churned inside her. In nearly every obvious respect, her eldest brother seemed less brilliant than Liu Qingshan. Yet ever since childhood she had possessed an inexplicable fear of Liu Qingfeng. Perhaps what frightened her was never his temper. It was the steadiness of a man who rarely spoke without already having weighed the consequences.
The sky isn't going to collapse. Let's take a walk together.
An hour passed. Xianxia waited anxiously outside the residence, unable to settle her heart. When Liu Qingfeng finally returned, tear stains still marked her face, but the lifeless despair in her eyes had changed. The knot strangling her heart seemed to have loosened. Holding the hems of her dress, Liu Qingfeng entered the residence and climbed the stairs. Xianxia followed close behind, utterly bewildered by the transformation.
Sir, do you want to accompany me to the mountains, to cultivate together?
Xianxia froze in astonishment. The young mistress before her was still fragile, but she was no longer hollow and defeated. Xianxia quickly nodded. Whatever Liu Qingfeng had said during that hour, he had not erased Liu Qingfeng's pain. He had done something more important. He had given her a road on which that pain could continue moving instead of becoming a grave. Meanwhile, Liu Qingfeng continued walking alone through the Lion Garden. His own path was far less easily untangled. He could no longer become the kind of pure Confucian scholar who devoted his entire life to scripture and learning, climbing step by step toward the loftiest realms of knowledge. The moment Liu Qingfeng had chosen to take that particular step, he had accepted that he would spend the rest of his life struggling in muddy waters. The grief in his heart could not be spoken aloud. What scholar did not dream of sitting within a scripture library, studying the sages until his writings on morality and etiquette endured for generations? What scholar did not dream of teaching brilliant students across the world and becoming a pillar of the literary realm? And what scholar did not dream of keeping pure wind within his sleeves, cleansing the traditions of Confucianism, and perhaps even opening a new road for those who came afterward? Yet someone still had to enter officialdom. Someone had to handle the smallest and dirtiest affairs of the mortal world. Someone had to argue over every copper coin when those coins concerned the livelihood of ordinary people. For a scholar, governing others could easily become more difficult than cultivating oneself. Lofty principles were clean on paper. Once brought into marketplaces, courts, taxes, favors, and human greed, every principle had to survive mud. Fortunately, the sages said that when one's learning reached a sufficiently profound level, Scholarship and governance did not necessarily have to oppose each other. Whether Liu Qingfeng could reach that height, however, was another matter entirely. At a small bridge spanning a stream, Liu Qingfeng stopped and turned. Liu Qingshan and Daoist nun Liu Boqi were approaching side by side. After a short while, only Liu Qingshan continued forward to meet his elder brother.
I want to travel around the eastern treasured Vial continent with Liu Boqi first. I want to visit Lake View Academy and the Great Sui Nation's Mountain Cliff Academy. I also want to take a study tour through the new academy that was just constructed in Dragon Spring Prefecture of the Great Lai Empire.
Liu Qingfeng smiled. His younger brother had survived disaster, lost the full use of his leg, and yet the road ahead of him had somehow become wider rather than narrower.
Have you thought everything through carefully and made up your mind? If you have, remember to notify the two teachers and ask for their opinions.
Mate Shem. Liu Boqi also said my leg can be healed, but I don't think there's any need to rush. Otherwise, I'll owe her another debt. If in the future.
If you become family, there'll be even less reason to keep worrying about such things.
Liu Qingshan turned to leave, but Liu Qingfeng suddenly called after him. His next words carried a weight that the younger man could not possibly understand.
I want to thank you on behalf of the ancestors of the Liu clan and all the scholars of the Azure Phoenix Nation. The scholarly values of the Liu clan remain as strong as ever, and the scholars of the Azure Phoenix Nation can still straighten their backs and hold their heads high.
Why, big brother? What are you trying to say we don't? I understand.
Liu Qingfeng reached out and carefully straightened his younger brother's clothes. There was no grand gesture, no solemn ceremony, only the quiet tenderness of an elder brother arranging the robes of someone who was about to walk a very long road.
There's no need for you to worry about these things, silly boy. Just focus on your studies and strive to become a Confucian sage one day. Bring honor to the Liu clan.
Big brother, has working as an official made you stupid? You are only a county magistrate now. What happens if you become an assistant minister or even a head minister in the future?
I'll figure it out when the time comes.
His faint smile concealed far more than Liu Qingshan could see. That answer sounds casual, but Liu Qingfeng is already behaving like someone who knows a storm is coming, and has decided that his younger brother must not be standing beneath it when it arrives.
Also, can I have a short chat with Liu Boqi while you go bid farewell to the two teachers? Rest assured, it won't take long.
Of course. That's no problem at all.
Liu Qingshan returned to Liu Boqi and explained the request. She agreed. As the young scholar limped away to say farewell to Mr. Fu and Mr. Liu, Liu Qingfeng led Liu Boqi toward the ancestral hall of the Liu clan. Liu Qingfeng remained silent throughout the walk. Strangely, Liu Boqi began to feel uneasy. For an earth immortal whose saber had faced genuine danger without hesitation, such discomfort was rare. The reason was Liu Qingshan. Her affection for him had begun almost at first sight, and because of that bond, she naturally viewed herself as a junior when facing Liu Qingfeng and Liu Jingting. Yet another feeling lingered beneath that unease. Liu Qingfeng did not seem nearly as ordinary as his outward appearance suggested. Outside the ancestral hall, Liu Qingfeng finally stopped.
Liu Boqi, suppose my younger brother Liu Qingshan possesses only the short lifespan of an ordinary mortal. What would you do?
I'm already an Earth Immortal, and advancing further into the upper 5 tiers should not be too difficult for me. If that is the case, I'm willing to sacrifice 100 years for Liu Qingshan.
Her answer came without hesitation. A century of her own longevity was a price she was prepared to pay. Yet Liu Qingfeng's questioning had only begun.
Then what if Liu Qingshan has a bright and prosperous future? What if he aspires to the 3 eternal pursuits of Confucianism establishing virtue, accomplishing worthy deeds, and leaving words worthy of being passed down, and he truly has an opportunity to achieve them. What will you do then?
I'll stand beside Liu Qingshan regardless of what happens. If anyone dares to damage my husband's great Tao, they'll first have to ask my saber, Jingad, and my bonded saber, Jiazuo, whether they agree.
It was an answer worthy of Liu Boqi, direct, fierce, and filled with the certainty of a saber cultivator. Yet Liu Qingfeng slowly shook his head.
Then what should I do?
Liu Qingfeng's voice softened. What followed was not a test of cultivation, nor an interrogation of whether Liu Boqi was powerful enough to protect his brother. It was a lesson about something far more difficult than wielding a saber.
When facing truly important matters, especially matters concerning life and death, I hope my sister-in-law can first consider things from Liu Qingshan's perspective. Your first thought should not be, I, Liu Boqi, believe this is correct. Therefore this must be the best choice for Liu Qingshan, so I will decide for him. To pursue the great Tao is to travel a perilous road. Conflict and death are unavoidable. But since you have said that you will stand beside Liu Qingshan no matter what happens, then I hope you will genuinely try to understand what he is thinking and what he truly seeks. And because of that, there is something I must make clear now. In the future, you will certainly suffer grievances. Some of them may be very serious.
This was the heart of Liu Qingfeng's warning. Protection without understanding can become another form of domination. Liu Boqi possesses strength that Liu Qingshan may never match, but if she uses that strength to choose his life for him, then even love could become a cage. For two people walking different great Taos, respecting the other person's choice may demand more courage than drawing a saber. At first, Liu Boqi had felt awkward when Liu Qingfeng casually called her his sister-in-law, but after hearing everything he said, that embarrassment disappeared. In its place rose sincere admiration and respect.
Rest assured, your words have completely convinced me, and I accept them wholeheartedly. I may be stubborn, but I can still tell whether someone's words are meant to help me or harm me.
The tension finally left Liu Qingfeng's shoulders.
It seems my younger brother really does have outstanding judgment.
He gestured toward the ancestral hall.
You're an immortal from the mountains, so you only need to bow 3 times before the ancestral hall of the Liu clan.
Liu Boqi did as instructed. 3 bows before the ancestral tablets, simple movements. Yet for her they carried the meaning of stepping toward another family and another fate. Then she noticed something unexpected. Liu Qingfeng bowed as well. A solemn feeling immediately settled over Liu Boqi's heart.
If everything proceeds according to plan, it won't be long before my name is erased from the genealogical records of the Liu clan. At that time, I will no longer be Liu Qingshan's elder brother. If he receives a letter from the Liu clan and insists on abandoning his journey to return to Lion Garden to criticize and denounce me, then you must stop him. Whether the 2 of you are still in the Eastern Treasured Vile continent or have already reached the Middle Earth Divine continent, protect him. Persuade him to continue traveling, continue studying, and continue pursuing knowledge.
Liu Boqi did not understand the full context. She did not know what Liu Qingfeng intended to do, nor why his actions might lead the Liu clan to erase his name. But the meaning behind his request was unmistakable. Whatever path Liu Qingfeng had chosen, he already expected to pay for it with reputation, family standing, and perhaps the hatred of those closest to him. More strikingly, he was arranging matters in advance, so Liu Qingshan's scholarly path would not be destroyed by that fallout. Liu Boqi gave a helpless smile and nodded.
You already want me to play the villain, you really aren't holding back.
Rather than explain further, Liu Qingfeng abruptly changed the subject.
I heard you taught Lady Liu Shu a rather vicious lesson.
For perhaps the first time in this conversation, the mighty Daoist nun looked genuinely guilty. But instead of rebuking her, Liu Qingfeng broke into a broad smile.
I've wanted to beat her up since I was a little boy. I originally thought I would have to wait another 7 or 8 years before getting the chance. So I suppose I should thank you again.
Only then did Liu Boqi truly begin to accept the Liu clan. Not merely Liu Qingshan, but the strange warmth, restraint, principles, and humanity carried by the family itself. Far in the distance, Liu Qingshan limped toward the ancestral hall. He saw his elder brother chatting merrily with the woman he loved, and his heart immediately relaxed. If Liu Qingfeng approved of Liu Boqi, then in Liu Qingshan's eyes, their marriage was practically settled. A broad grin appeared on the young scholar's face. At that moment, he felt as though there were no difficult matters left anywhere beneath the heavens. And that may be the most bittersweet image of all. Liu Qingshan approaches with a smile, believing the storms have passed, while only a short distance away, Liu Qingfeng has already begun preparing for the day when his own name may disappear from the Liu clan. One brother sees an open road toward love and scholarship. The other is quietly choosing to remain behind in the mud so that road can stay open. Chen and his companions entered the capital of the Azure Phoenix Nation without encountering the slightest obstruction. After Old Dragon City, this was only the second great city on their journey that truly radiated the wealth and confidence of a flourishing age. Streets flowed with people, shops stood shoulder to shoulder, and prosperity seemed to gather like invisible qi beneath the feet of every passerby. In the end, Chen Ping'an still handed Zhu Lian some gold and silver, allowing the old martial artist to purchase those novels and paintings that Shiru despised with every fiber of her being. Chen Ping'an himself found a time-honored shop and bought several sheets of exceptionally fine Xuan paper, each costing 1 copper coin. Having once worked among kilns and artisans, he understood better than most that seemingly ordinary objects could hide painstaking craftsmanship. Before entering the capital, he had already found a secluded place and transferred everything from his bamboo bookcase into his minimization treasure. This was not merely convenience. After the dangers of the Lion Garden, Chen Ping'an had become even more conscious of concealment. In the cultivation world, wealth displayed too openly could become a beacon, and a beacon could just as easily summon enemies as friends. During their stay at the 100-Flower Garden, Kui Dongshan had revealed several secrets concerning the grand debate between Buddhism and Daoism. Among the places he had mentioned was the White Cloud Daoist Temple, an obscure temple hidden within the Azure Phoenix Nation. Because of that single conversation, Chen Ping'an deliberately changed his route and avoided passing anywhere near it. A faint unease remained in his heart. He felt that the Lion Garden had already consumed more than enough of his good fortune. Now was not the time to swagger through the capital and invite the attention of either the Cloud Forest Jiang clan or the Imperial Tang clan of the Azure Phoenix Nation. For Chen Ping'an, caution was not cowardice. It was the discipline of someone who understood that surviving the martial world often depended on knowing when not to draw the sword. At noon, the group entered a restaurant on a crowded street. As dishes arrived and bowls emptied, conversations from nearby tables rose like waves. The grand debate between Buddhism and Daoism was approaching its conclusion, yet the contest had still not truly ended. Scholars, merchants, travelers, and ordinary citizens argued with astonishing enthusiasm. Some sided with Buddhism, others defended Daoism. Yet beneath every disagreement lay the same unmistakable pride. They were citizens of the Azure Phoenix Nation, and this extraordinary debate was taking place on their soil. A nation's fortune was not expressed only through armies, treasuries, or powerful cultivators. Sometimes it revealed itself through the confidence of ordinary people who believed that the affairs of their homeland mattered to the entire world. Chen Ping'an had witnessed that same invisible spirit before. He had felt it among the great Li scouts during the border blizzard, among the commoners of the great Sui capital, in the young girl riding through Old Dragon City, and even upon Stalactite Mountain. Different lands, different people, yet the same strange force bound countless hearts to the fate of a nation. Several neighboring tables soon turned toward an even stranger topic. Something had happened in the capital only yesterday, yet the tale had already spread through streets and alleys, as though carried by the wind itself. Chen Ping'an quietly listened. Pei Qian noticed her master's attention and immediately slowed her relentless assault on a plate of roast chicken. With one hand guarding her food, she pricked up her ears and listened as seriously as if someone were revealing a secret martial scripture. Julian naturally saw opportunity in distraction. His chopsticks silently crept toward a drumstick in Pei Qian's bowl, yet her eyes were sharp. Her chopsticks shot out and intercepted his. In the next instant, wood clicked against wood in a tiny battlefield above the table. Their hands blurred as they fought for position without uttering a word. Only when Chen Ping'an raised his head to take some food did both immediately cease hostilities. The moment he lowered his gaze again, the duel resumed. Chen Ping'an ignored the two living treasures completely. His interest remained fixed on the mysterious encounter being discussed beside them. The previous day, a violent downpour had swept through the capital. A visiting scholar had hurried beneath the eaves of a building to escape the rain. Nearby, a monk walked slowly through the storm beneath an umbrella. The scholar asked whether the monk might allow him to share the umbrella. The monk replied that he himself stood within the rain, while the scholar remained beneath dry eaves. Since the scholar was already untouched by the storm, there was nothing to save him from. Hearing this, the scholar stepped directly into the rain. But instead of welcoming him beneath the umbrella, the monk suddenly shouted and ordered him to find an umbrella of his own. The scholar could only retreat beneath the eaves, thoroughly dejected. Yet from this brief exchange, countless interpretations had already blossomed throughout the capital. Most listeners praised the Chan monk's profound understanding. They argued that although the scholar had stepped into the rain, the monk himself remained protected by the umbrella. The umbrella, they said, represented the Buddhist teachings, capable of guiding living beings beyond suffering. What the scholar lacked was not temporary shelter beneath another man's umbrella, but an umbrella within his own heart. Seen from that perspective, the monk's shout was not rejection, but awakening. Yet the very fact that so many people needed to explain the act afterward also exposed the danger of lofty principles. When compassion exists only in interpretation, one must still ask whether the person standing in the rain was ever truly helped. Julian finally admitted defeat in the war for the drumstick. He withdrew his chopsticks with dignity, poured himself a bowl of chicken soup, took one sip, and pursed his lips.
The taste is only so-so.
Chen Ping'an immediately understood what he meant, and smiled.
You're still a scholar at heart, so naturally you think the flavor is ordinary.
Julian nodded, then calmly expanded upon his point.
Indeed, to exert yourself, yet receive nothing in return. If it were young master, or either of those Liu brothers from the Lion Guard, you would probably have handed the scholar the umbrella and escorted him all the way home. And if the scholar stepped into a puddle or got one shoulder wet along the way, he might even complain that you hadn't helped him properly. But if the passerby were some foul-tempered Daoist priest, perhaps there would have been no story at all. He might simply walk straight past, without even glancing at the scholar beneath the eaves.
Chen Ping'an considered this for a moment. Then another possibility surfaced.
What if the Chan monk shouted first, but afterwards still offered the scholar help? What if the two of them then walked through the downpour towards their how would that bowl of chicken soup taste?
Julian gently swirled the soup in his bowl, watching the ripples circle the porcelain.
Then perhaps it would taste much better.
That simple exchange revealed the difference between Chen Ping'an and those who sought only perfect doctrines. He did not deny the value of awakening another person, but neither was he satisfied with enlightenment that stopped before action. To him, principle and kindness were strongest when they could walk through the same rain. Shiru finally understood what the two men had been discussing. Pei Qian, however, understood absolutely nothing. She had reached the far more urgent conclusion that philosophical debates were considerably less important than protecting one's drumstick. Chen Ping'an looked at her and smiled.
Don't only eat the drumstick. Have some rice too.
Pei Qian nodded solemnly, leaned backward, and proudly displayed her already bulging belly.
Master, I've already eaten a lot.
The capital, meanwhile, was overflowing with stories born from the great Buddhist-Daoist debate. Some monks had taken axes to Buddhist statues and burned the wood as fuel. Others openly ate meat and drank wine in crowded marketplaces, loudly declaring that food and drink merely passed through the body, while Buddha remained within the heart. Such acts were shocking enough to halt passers-by in their tracks. Whether one agreed or disagreed, the words forced people to think. The Daoist priests of the Azure Phoenix Nation, by contrast, rarely behaved in such astonishing ways. Rumor even claimed that the immortals and spiritual masters from the renowned Daoist temples were gradually losing ground in the debate. The most controversial matter concerned an eminent monk from Whitewater Temple, south of the capital, who had killed a cat. At first, many believed this would become the perfect weapon for the Daoists to attack Buddhism. Yet the eminent monks appeared prepared for precisely such criticism. Through layer after layer of solemn argument, they eventually left their Daoist opponents without a response. On the surface, Buddhism seemed to be winning through sharper arguments and more startling acts. Yet debates concerning the Tao are rarely decided by applause alone. What appears victorious before a crowd may still face judgment in the silence of one's own heart. Chen Ping'an merely listened. He neither rushed to praise nor condemn any of the stories. After lunch, he led Pei Qian, Julian, Shiru, and the others into the marketplace to wander among the capital's shops. There, Chen Ping'an discovered a pair of unusually large go-stone containers made from green-glazed porcelain. Though bigger than ordinary containers, their proportions remained elegant and refined. The shopkeeper claimed that they had once been used within the royal palace of the lofty Sky Nation, a country not famous for producing porcelain. Chen Ping'an carefully examined them. His years working at the kilns had given him an eye that ordinary collectors could not easily fool. More importantly, the lids were original pieces matched to the containers rather than later replacements. That alone raised their value considerably. The shopkeeper demanded 50 taels of silver. Chen Ping'an paid without hesitation. This small purchase was another reminder that Chen Ping'an's road had never consisted solely of swords, fists, and cultivation realms. The boy who had once worked beside furnaces still lived inside the traveler carrying a pseudo-celestial sword. His knowledge of ordinary craftsmanship remained part of his Tao. Not long afterward, Chen Ping'an spotted a tiny yellow gourd and bought it for Pei Qian. Such exceptionally small gourds were elegantly known as gold among gourds. The smaller and finer they were, the more collectors treasured them. The little gourd immediately reminded Chen Ping'an of the Lion Garden, where Daoist nun Liu Boqi had stood atop the courtyard wall and used a similar miniature gourd to contain the slug demon's true body. This one, however, possessed no mystical function. It was simply an exquisite trinket. Chen Ping'an had liked it at first glance. More importantly, Pei Qian's eyes had become glued to it the instant she saw it. So he bought it for his disciple without waiting for her to ask. In Pei Qian's imagination, traveling the cultivation world meant becoming like her master. And if one wished to resemble Chen Ping'an, Then naturally one needed a gourd from which to drink wine. Even a child could see that the little yellow gourd was outrageously expensive. Pei Qian believed its tiny size suited her perfectly, but she had not dared ask Chen Ping'an to buy it. When he voluntarily paid for it, her face immediately blossomed into a smile she could not suppress. Clutching the precious little gourd with both hands, Pei Qian proudly made her declaration.
I'm going to drink wine.
A familiar knuckle immediately descended upon her forehead. Pei Qian squatted down, clutching the sore spot in pain. Yet even that could not erase the joy in her eyes. The gourd remained held tightly in her hand. In a journey filled with demons, sword cultivators, hidden clans, and struggles over the great Tao, moments like this carried their own weight. Pei Qian did not treasure the gourd because it was rare. She treasured it because her master had noticed what she wanted before she dared to speak. Elsewhere in the capital, however, the spiritual contest that everyone treated as a grand spectacle had already produced consequences far heavier than gossip. Inside Whitewater Temple, beside a well sealed for many years, the young monk in a white kasaya sat alone. The arguments that had once appeared so brilliant before others now seemed incapable of protecting him from himself.
We've lost. We've lost. Buddhism did not lose. We were the ones who lost.
Tears streamed down his face as he looked toward the distance. The monk who had helped create one of the most discussed incidents in the capital now saw something terrifying in the shadow cast by his own actions.
If ordinary people imitate what I did, they will be walking into a demon's den. I was wrong. I was wrong.
This confession overturned the triumphant version spreading through the streets. The issue was no longer whether an argument could silence one's opponent. The real question was what happened when an extraordinary cultivator's symbolic act became an ordinary person's excuse for cruelty. A teaching powerful enough to influence others also carried the burden of how others might misunderstand it. At almost the same time, near the obscure White Cloud Daoist temple, another scene unfolded, one far less grand, yet perhaps no less important. A child from the neighborhood had lost a paper kite among the tall old trees, and a furious woman once again unleashed a torrent of abuse toward the temple. The middle-aged temple master wisely hid far away. Soon, the young Daoist priest came sobbing to find his master, his frustration finally overflowing.
Master, why don't we just chop those trees? Downtime people nearby are always cursing us. Even the worshippers are being frightened away. If this continues, no one will offer incense anymore, and then we'll have nothing to eat. You won't even be able to buy books.
Naturally, the temple master had no intention of cutting down those ancient trees. Yet seeing how miserable his disciple looked, he could only take the boy by the hand and lead him back toward the study. The young priest sniffled a few times. Life in the white cloud. Daoist temple had already subjected his small body to more neighborhood hostility than most children would ever encounter, so his sadness came and went quickly. Before long, his natural liveliness returned. Compared with some of his senior brothers, he had indeed gotten off lightly. Several of them had once been scratched across the face with rakes by angry women complaining about the temple's morning bell and evening drum. Whenever those senior brothers later ventured outside on errands, they hurried through the neighborhood like unwelcome rats. Their master simply told them that enduring such things was also cultivation. During hot summer nights, however, the disciples would sometimes find that their supposedly cultivated master could not sleep either. He too would walk outside, sit beneath the trees, and slowly wave a fan against the heat. Once, the young Daoist priest had asked why. Were they not cultivators? After cultivating for so many years, should a calm heart not naturally make the body feel cool? His master had been unable to explain it. He had merely smiled. The boy, offended by such an unsatisfactory answer, had snatched the fan from his hand. Fortunately, this temple master seemed almost incapable of becoming angry with anyone. After consoling his disciple on this particular day, the middle-aged temple master handed him an elementary Confucian text to read. Then he returned to the legalist book lying open upon his own desk. He had just reached an idea concerning governance. Ruling a nation resembled bathing oneself. Some hair would inevitably be lost in the process, yet one could not abandon the bath because of that loss. The temple master raised his brush and began writing notes, again. The original page was already covered so densely with annotations that there was scarcely room for another mark. With no space remaining, he pulled out the cheapest paper he owned and continued writing there, intending to insert the additional sheet between the book's pages afterward. This obscure Taoist priest did not treat Confucian, legalist, or Buddhist books as enemy territory. He read them, questioned them, recorded his changing thoughts, and waited for understanding to deepen. In a capital obsessed with determining whether Buddhism or Taoism had won, his method was strangely different. He was less interested in defeating another school than in correcting himself. The young Taoist priest, who had never loved reading nearly as much as listening to stories, soon put his own book aside. He walked over and watched his master's brush race across the page. Unable to understand the dense notes, he rose onto his toes and tried to inspect the book itself.
Master, what are you writing?
The temple master set down his brush and returned it to a wooden brush holder he had carved himself.
I understood something new after reading this legalist, saying again, so I'm writing it down. The next time I read this passage, I can compare what I think then with what I think now. If I keep polishing and testing my understanding again and again, perhaps one day the knowledge written by sages will truly become knowledge that belongs to me.
Oh, is that so?
But the boy's earlier grievance had not disappeared entirely. His expression became unhappy again.
Master, we refuse to cut those trees down, yet the neighbors keep cursing and despising us. They complain about this, then complain about that. No matter what we do, it seems wrong to them. When will it finally stop? Senior brothers and I are really pitiful.
The temple master looked at his disciple with gentle eyes. There was even a trace of apology in his smile.
Don't blame our neighbors. If you're angry, then blame your master instead. Because your master still doesn't know the answer to that question.
The young Taoist scratched his head beneath the square kerchief worn by the priests of White Cloud Taoist Temple. Unlike many Taoists elsewhere, they wore neither hibiscus hats, fishtail hats, nor lotus flower hats. Hope suddenly returned to the boy's face.
Then when will Master know the answer?
Master and disciple were speaking about entirely different kinds of answers. Yet the middle-aged temple master still gave the question serious thought before sighing.
I still don't know.
The young priest suddenly giggled and patted his master's arm.
There's no hurry, Master. We're not in a hurry at all. Do you want me to massage your shoulders?
The temple master finished his notes on the legalist passage. After thinking for a moment, he reached for a Buddhist scripture resting on the desk, a volume containing nearly 100 Buddhist stories. But he did not immediately open it. Instead, an amused smile slowly appeared.
Buddha should be far more anxious than we are. Yet even Buddha isn't anxious. So why should we be?
Perhaps this was why the seemingly insignificant White Cloud Taoist temple had been mentioned by Qingshan at all. While famous cultivators fought over victory and defeat, this impoverished temple master was willing to admit that he did not know. In matters of the great Tao, knowing that one's answer remains unfinished may itself be a rare kind of clarity. Then the young priest suddenly remembered something much more urgent.
Oh, right! Exclamation master. Senior brother said our rice vat is almost empty.
The temple master nodded with perfect calm.
Got it.
The young Taoist priest rolled his eyes. His master was always like this. Most likely, White Cloud Daoist Temple would once again have to tear down the east wall just to repair the west. And then something changed. A faint golden breeze seemed to drift through the window. It shimmered across the study, brushed the table, and flipped open the book before the temple master. For one fleeting instant, the entire room seemed to have been turned over, cleansed, and made new. The young Taoist priest blinked again and again. Nothing unusual remained. After staring for a while, he concluded that he must have imagined everything. His master, meanwhile, had closed his eyes. To the boy, it merely looked as though too many books had finally exhausted him, and he had begun to doze off. Not wishing to disturb him, the young priest quietly stepped outside and gently closed the study door. The golden breeze appeared without thunder, swordlight, or heavenly proclamation. Yet in a world where cultivation could resonate with principles, and where the fortunes of nations could gather invisibly, such silence made the moment even more extraordinary. Something had changed inside that humble room, even if the young disciple lacked the eyes to recognize it. Far away, amid the bustling capital, Chen Ping'an suddenly stopped and lifted his gaze toward a certain direction. Pei Qian immediately noticed.
What's the matter?
Chen Ping'an lowered his gaze. Whatever he had sensed, he chose not to pursue it.
It's nothing.
Yet after everything Qingshan had once said about the White Cloud Daoist Temple, that distant glance was difficult to dismiss as meaningless. Chen Ping'an had deliberately avoided the temple because he feared attracting another thread of fate. Ironically, fate did not always require a person to walk through the gate. Sometimes, one movement of the Tao was enough for two distant hearts to sense the same wind.